gosh, I think it was about probably 70 or 70 when I was just young, I was a teenager, and started getting into it. But, there's meditation and there's meditation, something like that. There are different types, different levels of meditation, yoga, and I really got into it. It was only actually, I saw Prabhupada at the university April 72, but then I only really got into it right at the end of 72. I went to England, through Australia, and in Sydney. Now, believe it or not, I don't want to embarrass myself or make any of you question me. But I was from the surfing community. You heard of surfing? There's not a lot going on here, I think. Yeah, anyway. So one of the top surfers in the world at the time, his name's Ted Spencer, he's still sort of involved in it. He was into this type of meditation, and he surfed in the World Championships in 71 or 72. Yeah, and like really advocating that sort of thing. So I was staying in Sydney. I'd come from Auckland, and I was staying in Sydney, and this fellow Ted Spencer, at least in surfing circles, he was really one of the top people in the world. And he, we, for meditation, for yoga, at least to do it the best possible, it's best to be vegetarian. Yeah, I don't know if you're aware of that. It's definitely best to be vegetarian, and it's I wouldn't necessarily say it's like really just standard that just everybody just is. But really a lot are. So he was, and he sent a vegetarian sweet. It was about this size. He sent it with a friend who was also a member of the surfing community. His name was Spider. Interesting young fellow. And he said, take it to all the surfers in Sydney and get them all to take a bite. So I was staying in North Sydney at the time. I don't imagine you're so familiar with the layout of Sydney, but up near Palm Beach, North Sydney. And Spider showed up on our doorstep with this sweet, which, vegetarian sweet, which had been about that size, or maybe that size. That was about this size. It had many tooth marks on it, because people had been taking bites from it. So he said, here, Ted Spencer says you must take a bite. Oh, okay, sure, will do. So I took a bite, and it was nice. It was nice. Then I went to London at the end, towards the end of 72. I actually went on a ship on like a cruise liner sort of thing. And we stopped in Melbourne, Perth, then we stopped in Durban, Cape Town, then we stopped in Madeira, out off the coast of Europe. So we stopped in whatever the capital of Portugal is, and then went to London. And I had, up till that time, I was just interested in all these sorts of things. You could say, because it was the hippie time. It was the hippie time. And so people, the young people, were looking for alternatives. And I was looking for alternatives. Well, I was one of the young people, all looking for alternatives. And I was taking an interest in sort of, what would you say, kind of like, and again, I don't want to frighten anyone, but like occult, sort of magical types of things, Yeah. Like European magic. And I arrived in London, and I went to basically the same sort of place. And, I found it so interesting. I had tried doing meditation, like I said, maybe from 1970. For a year or two, I'd been trying to do meditation, but I hadn't really been, I guess, very successful at it. I didn't really get a lot from it. But, I had a conviction in my heart that, it must be good, it must work, because the Beatles are into it. Not long ago, just, I don't know, a month or so ago, I was doing some sort of presentation in a situation like this, and there was a young fellow there. He was a teenager. And I said, the Beatles. And he gave me this sort of puzzled look, and I said, you heard of the Beatles, right? No. Yeah. But in those days, the Beatles were like gods. They were just like from another dimension. It was really amazing. So they're into it, so it must be good. So I went, and I found this system of meditation, which I'm going to be talking about, like some of the specifics and details and the how-to and that sort of thing, and what not to do, some different aspects of the picture of meditation. And it was just amazing. It was truly amazing. Mantra meditation and yoga, because the two, meditation and yoga, they're more or less, they're not exactly synonymous. Well, you could say they're synonymous. Meditation is really part of yoga. Tuning in to higher energy and higher awareness, higher consciousness. Anyway, okay, we'll get into it. I'll explain more in a little while, but right now we're going to do a little meditation. Mantra meditation. And you can see on the screen there, that's a mantra. It's called the Maha Mantra. Mantra is a Sanskrit term. It's a compound word. It's a compound of two words, man, which means mind, and tra, which means to deliver. Like to deliver, protect, but more like to deliver onto onto a higher level, onto a better level, onto a safer level. So, there's an element of protect in it. So, we'll chant a couple of mantras. First of all, I'll chant a mantra which isn't on the screen there, but I'll chant it anyway. And if you know it, I suspect a few of you may know it. If you know it, you can chant along, and then we'll chant the Maha Mantra. And the way we do it is called responsive meditation. Okay, let's see what happens there. But responsive meditation means that one person is leading the chanting of the mantra, whatever the mantra is. And so he or she chants the mantra first, and then everyone responds. It's responsive. And then the person leading chants the mantra again, and everyone responds. Yeah, it's a very traditional. Okay. Yeah, well, we can chant this mantra first. So we'll actually be chanting, in due course, we'll be chanting 4 mantras. This will be number 1. And this is, anyway, we'll chant it. And then 2 others, and then we'll come onto that Maha Mantra. And we want you all to get into it. Give it a good shot. Have a go. Just have a go. Don't be self-conscious. We're all in this together. We're all friends. And so you can just get into it, and you don't need to worry what anyone else is going to think of you or anything of that sort. Just get into it. And my prediction is, and I have been doing it for a while actually, including making this sort of presentation. And the practice, it's actually a little more than 50 years. It was 50 years on the 7th of January. Yeah. And I can assure you, I promise you, that if you get into it, if you sit there and you're sort of, a little introverted and that sort of thing, well, you tend to get out of things what you put into them. So you may not, who knows, but it's not so likely at least that you'll really get something from it. But if you really get into it, if you chant from the heart and really try to absorb yourself in it and put aside thoughts of the day and work and people and life and relationships, whatever's going on in your life, and just try and get into it, my prediction is that when we finish our little mantra meditation, initial mantra meditation session before we explain more, if you get into it, you will have really quite a striking experience. Yeah, seriously. Because like I said, I've done this a lot. I don't know how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, but really a lot. And generally, it works like that. And I'll tell you a story. If you have heard of the Beatles, I'll tell you a story a meeting I had with George Harrison many years ago. Of course, he died, gosh, I don't know, 15 years ago or something.
2001.
Was it?
2001.
Oh, okay. You know more about him than me. I mean, I knew him a bit, not well, but, I'll tell you an interesting little story from a meeting I had with him when he told about his experience with these things. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. And I'm a bit hoarse, as you can hear, so just bear with me. And we'll be singing. We'll be singing. This is a very, very traditional and very ancient, and just, from before recorded Western history way of doing meditation, but it's highly authentic and it works. Okay, so here we go. And who's operating this actually?
Right at the back.
Oh, there you are. So you'll take us through the two mantras, Prabhupada, then Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Okay, all right. Here we go. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Krishna Prestaya Hare Krishna. Well, congratulations. I think you did great. I think you have bright futures in mantra meditation. Really. But it's nice. At least I, for one, can tell you, I feel a lot better. I was already feeling okay. Pretty good, actually. I feel even better. So, okay, let us say a few words, the background, some of the concepts and understandings behind it, and how to and how not to, these types of ideas. Because this whole yoga, when we talk about yoga, of course, generally speaking, when people hear the word yoga, they picture a person sitting cross-legged, right? Sort of, you know what I mean? I think, at least, a lot of people, when they hear the term yoga, some picture like that comes into their minds. That is one type of yoga. Physical exercises, including breathing exercises, pranayama, and the physical exercises. And in general, in the broadest sense, when we use the term yoga, what we're actually referring to is a number of particular practices which help us in different ways bring different aspects of our natures into harmony with higher spiritual energies and higher spiritual realities. So the hatha yoga, the physical exercises, the sitting cross-legged, and sometimes they sometimes stand on their heads. There's so many types of hatha yoga exercises. That's for helping bring the body in tune with a higher, actually spiritual energies and nature. Then the meditation, technically speaking, you can say, can be said. It's not necessarily as simple as this, but you can say that it's a form of yoga called dhyana yoga. Dhyana means to meditate or to focus the mind. When we say meditate, we mean focus the mind on something, but classically, something spiritual. In this case, spiritual sound vibration. Obviously, that's what we were doing a few minutes ago. Dhyana yoga. So it's bringing the mind more in tune. And therefore, when people do it, and like I was saying earlier, they get into it. And really try and apply themselves. Then, our founder, Prabhupada, I pointed him out on the side there. Prabhupada, he said, peace of mind is the first installment. But there are also higher things than just, being peaceful. Although peaceful, is pretty good too. Particularly in this day and age, life tends to not be so peaceful and people tend to not be so peaceful. Then another form of yoga is That was dhyana with a D, but then there's jnana with a G. Jnana. Jnana means knowledge. Knowledge. Meaning like philosophical type of knowledge, understandings. I mean, arguably this is what we're doing now actually. Because, we're sharing some ideas and concepts and like that. Then, there are many. There's another one. It's called Sankhya. Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya, strictly speaking, the word means to enumerate or like to count. At least it's related with counting. It means analyzing the material nature into like its component elements. Component elements means like earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, ego. Ego in the sense of just identity. Oftentimes when people think of ego, they take it to mean, someone's very bossy or, egotistic. They like push themselves forward. But ego, actually the Latin word ego just means I am. So sense of identity. So to evaluate reality and yourself in those terms, that is a function of Sankhya Yoga. And it helps to bring your, not just your mind, but we make a distinction between just the mind and the actual intelligence, the intellect, the capacity to distinguish, discriminate in a nice sense, but just see the different, components of reality, you can say. Yeah, and in this way, but in a higher sense, not just like a scientific, modern day chemical sense or biological sense. Yeah, but on a higher level as being essential components of reality as we experience it. And there are others. Shat Chakra Yoga, which is to do with elevating chakras within the physical body. That's more tricky. That's much more tricky. And Karma Yoga. Karma in this context means not good and bad, like good karma, bad karma, but karma in the broad sense means just activity, or particularly like work, duty. Yeah, that is a person's karma. If you're a doctor, then that's your karma in this context. So doing your natural duty, but instead of just doing it, just, to make money and to get ahead and all these types of everyday types of things, but really to do a duty which is natural to you, physically, psychologically, and emotionally. And in this way, doing a duty which is sort of flows from you naturally in terms of your nature, then this will help you to tune in, come more in tune with the energies, and particularly the higher energies in life. Right, so, and yoga as such has been going on, actually, if you really get into it, the tradition would tell you millions of years. Yeah. So anyway, here we are. We're focusing on meditation, mantra meditation. And like I said, well, Prabhupada said, peace of mind is the first installment. That was my experience. Having done certain forms of meditation, like in 1971, 1972, not really got much from it, but in very early 73, I got into this form of, much more traditional form of mantra meditation, and wow. Coming from, and again, another confession, sort of a hippie background, if you know what I mean. If you don't know what I mean, don't worry, it's okay. You don't miss too much. But yeah, very free and easy sort of background, you could say, in certain senses. Yeah, I was not feeling very satisfied. In fact, I was feeling quite dissatisfied because, I've been trying to do this meditation and other things which the hippies were doing, and it didn't seem to work, at least for me, and even for a lot of people. So then I got into this form of mantra meditation, and I found, really, within 2 weeks of applying myself every day, for a while, every day, like not like I had to give up everything and just do that, but for a while, every day, I suddenly realized, hey, my concerns and anxieties are basically just kind of dissolved. Where did they go? I don't know, but they just melted away. It was a very clear experience, extremely clear experience. And, I've been doing it. I really got into it really seriously as of the 7th of January 1973. Where were you on the 7th of January 1973? Do you remember? Previous lifetime, I think, we would say. Anyway, that's another part of the preacher. Some of the day we'll get into that. But yeah, it really was quite something. And some years later, I just mentioned very briefly a conversation I had with George Harrison, who, if you've not heard of him, was an extremely, with a capital E, famous, like entertainer, you could say, musician. And, he became a very serious meditator, in the late 60s. So I met, I sort of knew him a bit, but at the end of 79, I went out to his place in England, just out from London, and he and another one of my friends who was a close friend of his, we had this long discussion, like 3 hours. It was really quite a discussion. And at one point, the subject of how did he get into mantra meditation, what happened, what was sort of his story, so to speak. So he told us that he and John Lennon, who, in case you not heard of the Beatles, he was another one of very famous. Unfortunately, he was murdered. Yeah, but anyway, the two of them, they were on a boat cruise in the Mediterranean, and they had already they've been getting into mantra meditation, not so much the yoga like the exercises, but the mantras. They've really been getting into them. And particularly George. So they're on this boat cruise, and one morning they woke up and they just had this inspiration. Hey, let's chant the Maha Mantra. Yeah, let's do it. And they picked up their guitars, and they're just lifetime musicians. And so they're playing their guitars and singing specifically the Maha Mantra. I mentioned Maha means great. There are many mantras. There are really many on different levels. But the Maha Mantra is just in the tradition. It's accepted as that, the great mantra. So now they're singing. It's like 7 in the morning or something, 7 and 8, and then someone came and said, hey, it's breakfast time, come have breakfast. They just carried on. They didn't stop for breakfast. And they just carried on and on. And then midday, maybe 1 o'clock came, and someone came and said, hey, you didn't have breakfast. You got to come for lunch. Lunch is being served. They didn't stop. They just carried on. I guess they stopped for toilet breaks from time to time. Other than that, they just carried on. And then the evening meal time came, like 7 o'clock or something. But they just carried on. Seriously. Until 5 in the morning. 22 hours. 22 hours of chanting the Maha Mantra. And George said we just did it for like 15 minutes or something, but still, at least I felt, some invigoration, internal invigoration coming. And I think some of you also did. So he said the experience was just so profound and powerful and sort of emotionally overwhelming. He said it just convinced him, and he carried on until he died. Unfortunately, George is a really nice guy, highly intelligent, but he was addicted to cigarettes. So cigarettes and meditation do not go well together. Like being vegetarian and doing meditation, they go well together. Yeah. But cigarettes, they don't. And he got throat cancer. Anyway, poor fellow. So anyway, so there we are, and he's saying, what that experience that was. And in my youth, here's another confession, I was a Beatles fan. And the Rolling Stones, and I mean, seriously, I can tell you a few stories, but I won't. Yeah, really. So, I knew all these songs backwards. So I said to him, what would it have been like if you sang one of your Beatles songs for 22 hours? And I actually mentioned a particular song. I said, what would it have been like if you sang, I want to hold your hand for 22 hours? Have you heard of that song? Oh, you have? Really? Okay. If you haven't, don't worry. It's not, you don't need to worry about it. So, I said that to George. And George laughed. And sort of, momentarily thought. And he said, well, I think it would have been a hard day's night. mean something to some of you. It might not mean anything to some of you. It's another one of their famous songs. Yeah, it's been a hard day's night. I've been working like a dog. Anyway, okay. So yeah. So the thing is this, that we look, there we have on the screen, right? There it is. Written in just your ordinary English script or Western script. And I mean, the words are Sanskrit words. And, you know, maybe it would appear to be more authentic if we just showed you in Sanskrit and said, there it is. And you'd think, wow, look at that, far out. But, you know, it's okay. It's the same thing written in typical, you know, Latin alphabet. It's the same thing. The effect is precisely the same, no less, no different. In other words, you don't need to learn Sanskrit at all in order to get into it. But the thing is, these are spiritual words. These are spiritual words. And a type of a proof, if we get a little scientific about it, a type of a proof that they're spiritual and not material is this, that everything material includes, you know, like the clothes we're wearing, our bodies themselves, flesh and blood, etc. This building, you know, all these things, these are material. And then there's material sound. Material sound means just like ordinary talk. Hello, how are you? How's the family? I mean, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with asking people how they are, but it's not really spiritual. It's not really spiritual sound vibration. And, you know, I don't know what's top of the pops these days in, you know, in China or Bollywood or in Europe. I don't know the popular music of today. But one thing you can know is that whatever is popular today in just the ordinary sphere of life, give it a few weeks and it will not be so popular. It'll be replaced. Like those Beatles songs I mentioned, 2 of them. In my youth, you know, I was like 14, 13, 14. Wow. When the girls would see the Beatles, they would scream and chase them. Really. And it was wild. They called it Beatlemania. And the songs were top of the pops, but they're not now. They're kind of forgotten. They're being replaced and replaced again. And every few weeks, there's something new. Because it's material sound vibration. And as everything like physically material is temporary, so the effects of material sound, the effects are temporary. Means some you know, the latest popular song, you may think, oh wow, it's nice. And it may have, you know, be pleasant sounding, nice tune and all that. But in a few weeks, you'll feel, okay, had enough of that. What next? Yeah, that's because it's material sound. It's material sound. Like one person once suggested to Prabhupada, the same person, that listen, this is just, ordinary syllables. You can chant anything. And the fellow said, why don't you chant Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola? What would it? Cola-Cola, Coca-Cola. Or, something like that. And it'll be the same. The effect will be the same. Well, look, here's not a challenge even, but just an idea. Give it a try. Report back. Come back next time, and report back. What was it like? I can tell you, people have tried it, and it doesn't work because it's material sound, and quite quickly it becomes like, okay, that's enough. But spiritual sound has different effects on us. If we get into it, like everything, you've got to get into it. If you really get into it. So, I've been doing this since 73. I mean, like really seriously since January the 7th, 73. A little over 50 years now. I've been doing it, chanting many mantras, but mainly this one, the Maha Mantra. And fasten your seatbelts. Are you ready? Generally, for a couple of hours a day. How's that? No kidding. I'm not kidding you. Yeah, and sometimes more. Sometimes we do it the whole day, occasionally. Yeah. And I can tell you from just my own practical experience, and really I'm not pulling your legs or, this is not just propaganda or advertising, something like that. But frankly, not only is it possible to do that for years and years and years, but actually it gets better. It actually gets better because it's spiritual sound vibration. And, that's me telling you. And, there's a saying, talk is cheap. I'm sure you've heard that saying before. Talk is cheap. Well, actually, it's not entirely accurate. Talk is free. Yeah, talk is free. You can just talk. Yeah, and talk is free. So, I'm not just saying, just believe me, but what I am saying is, give it a try and then you see. You see and you make your own decision from your own experience. But when you do, if you're going to do it, do it. Get into it, give it a good shot, give it a good try, and really see what happens. Yeah, anyway, I hope you had a nice experience as we were singing. And it was just a little taste, just a little touch of it. So yeah, that's what I'd like you to do. Give it a try. And we will be having another meeting after a little while, right? Anyway, you'll notify everyone. A couple of weeks or a few weeks or something. Yeah. So, yeah, this is Hui, excuse me. She's my boss today. Yeah, it's true. And come along and just share. Give it a try and see what happens and come along and share. And yeah, why not? But if you're going to, give it a good try. Now I'm going to make a couple of a technical point here. We were singing. There are different ways of doing meditation. Oh yeah, it's a kind of I mean, it's a sophisticated field, and there are subtleties involved. But here's a very important point for you. You know, we were singing. We also do it, like I said, I do every day for a couple of hours. And I did already today, I promise you. Yeah. And I haven't actually missed a day in 50 years. Haven't missed a day. Not one. Because it's short, it's amazing, and it's really wonderful. But the thing is this, you know, when I first was taught a particular type of meditation, I was taught that you sit down and you just, within your mind, you repeat a term, yeah. And that's, you know, there you go, you just do that. So I was taught to do that a couple of times a day, like 15, 20 minutes a day. And I know some people who really got something out of it. I didn't. Such is life. Yeah. So, but you may not know that the tradition, the meditation is done, particularly initially, not silently, but it's done audibly. Yeah. Because the whole idea is focus the mind. You've all got minds. You know what they're like. Here and there and everywhere. You know, it happens, doesn't it? Sometimes even the mind. I mean, you know, I read in Time magazine, would you believe, about, 30 or 40 years ago, something which really struck me. It was in Time magazine, so it must have been correct. That's a joke, by the way. But anyway, I read in Time magazine that every American, at least once in their life, will have to see a psychologist because, you know, their mind will be sort of going a bit haywire. Doesn't mean, you know, like insanity or something extreme, but just, you know, like depression getting the better of them, anxiety to the point where they feel, gosh, I need help. Yeah, so the mind, we've all got minds, and sometimes our minds play up a bit. Yeah. So now, in the tradition, the meditation, at least particularly in the beginning, but also on an ongoing basis, is done audibly, not just within the mind, because it is your mind which you're trying to get focused. So if you try to, you know, work on your mind with your mind, it's kind of a contradiction. We want to come in order to get the mind cooperative, focused, so we can become absorbed nicely in meditation. We have to come from a higher level than the mind, rather than just within the mind itself. So therefore, the meditation is done audibly, as we were doing. And here, we count the number. I mean, at least someone who's really getting into it and trying to take it seriously. We count, we use beads to count how many times we've recited particularly this mantra when we're chanting this mantra. These are my beads. There you go. I've been using these. Well, my first beads, they eventually sort of disintegrated, but I've been using these little more than 30 years. They were white. Look at them. And it's not just my fingers are dirty, but, yeah, they're well used. Well used. So, we chant audibly because then the sense, the mind, it said the mind is the sixth sense. I mean, more often than not, they talk of 5 senses. The sense of hearing, touch, taste, smell, 5 senses. Sense of taste, that's 5. But then the mind is also considered the 6th sense. So, the sound vibration, it is said in the tradition that the sense of hearing is the strongest sense. It's stronger than the mind. Through the sense of hearing, you can control your mind. And an example which is given is, if someone is sleeping, you can wake them up. If you're close enough, you can wake them by touching them. But if you're more than about, a meter or so away from them, you can't wake them up by touching them. You can't wake them up by the sense of, that's the sense of touch. You can't wake them up through the sense of taste, obviously, or the sense of smell. But if you make enough noise, you can wake them up, even if you're 20 meters away or even further. You can wake people up if they're sleeping. So in a sense, people in general are sleeping spiritually, you could say. They're very conscious of the world and what's going on, but they're not really tuned in spiritually. So therefore, at least in the beginning stages, and actually on an ongoing basis, best if you want to get into meditating and to have it work for you, use audible sound vibration. You can sing, you can just chant to yourself. We chant on our beads to keep track of the number of times. And then after a while, generally after a couple of years, when people have tuned into it, and they're able to focus in their meditation, and their minds are not just going off here and there when they're trying to meditate, then we teach silent meditation to them. Then we teach, because it's more difficult to focus the mind with the mind. Got to come from above it. The sense of hearing being stronger, the stronger sense. And it said that there is a direct link from the ears to the heart. So when the spiritual, even, you may have had the experience, if someone says something nice to you, like, don't mind me, but what's your name? Jim. Okay. If someone says, Jim, Jim is a really nice guy. He is just really, really nice. Normally, Jim would start smiling. Because it's sound vibration. It's positive sound vibration. It goes to the heart. But, if you're living in the middle of a city, and during the day it's noisy and trucks and cars and just, all that. It disturbs the mind. But if you're by a river or a stream, mildly flowing water, you find it has a pacifying type of effect. So there's a connection from the ears to the heart, and different types of sounds will affect the heart. The heart, not just the organ, which is pumping blood, but meaning the seat of our consciousness, the seat of our being. Yeah. So I think I should wind up?
Up to you, Maharaj.
Wind down, wind up, wind out.
Up to you, Maharaj.
Because it's about time, right? It's coming up to 9.
Yeah, we still have some time, Maharaj.
Huh?
We still have some time.
Oh, we do. Anyway, I'm sort of, I don't want to go too far. I mean, it's the whole thing. We could just sit here for days. But for starters, let's make a start. Let's get into it and give it a good try, and you see what happens. But only when you give it a good try. Don't come back and say, yeah, I did it for 2 minutes and my favorite program came on television. That was it. Yeah, report back and let's see what happened. Let's see what happened. Because it's spiritual sound vibration, transcendental spiritual sound vibration, which has a spiritual effect on our hearts. And like I said, peace of mind, first installment. See if it works for you like that. And here's another thing. Try and do it. I mean, you can do it anytime, 24 hours in the day. But the early morning is the best time because the atmosphere is more, in Sanskrit we would say sattvic. Sattvic means, well, literally it means good, like in the sense of pure. So the atmosphere is just more peaceful and pleasant, and you, if you've had a decent night's sleep, you should be more peaceful and pleasant. At the end of a hard day's work, you may feel a bit, like overtaxed. I mean, you can chant any time, and you're welcome to chant any time. Best time is early in the morning for a more immediately noticeable effect. And I would recommend to any of you, I know some of you are already doing this, those of you who have not, try and do it for, like I'd say, give it a go, hang in there, try and focus your mind, maybe for 15 or 20 minutes to start off with. I do it a couple of hours, 2, 3, every day, literally. Yeah. And you can do it walking in the street. You don't have to be in of course it's very nice in a peaceful place, a peaceful time of the day, but I do it basically whenever I'm walking in a city, and you kind of, you sort of phase out of the city scene. It's really nice, actually. Yeah. But not that your intelligence, like your faculties, become dulled, like you become sleepy or something like that. Actually, the mind becomes clearer. And one's, intellectual capabilities, thinking and understanding and making decisions and like that, it all becomes enhanced. because this is dealing with consciousness. We're dealing with like the roots of our being, and tuning the roots of our being, I mean, into themselves and into, the universe, actually, ultimately. So there you go. I'm going to leave it at that for the time being. Give it a try, see how it goes. I won't be here, but Hui will be. You can report back to her. Yeah. And I'll be back after a while. I'll check up on you also at that time. But like I said, my prediction is that it will really have an impact, a very positive impact on you and your life in many ways. Yeah. So there you go. Thanks very much for listening very attentively.